Hello, my name is Rob Ward. I've been an electronics technician for about 12 years now for the Department of Defense. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about troubleshooting electronics equipment. Troubleshooting electronics equipment doesn't have to be a hard thing. Most people look at electronics as if they were aliens or bad monsters, but really they're a simple input and output piece of equipment. Now, all electronics are similar. They all have the inputs and outputs. And today we're going to discuss a little bit about how we go about troubleshooting those things on a simple level. We're not going to get too in depth with this. We're going to get very simple, and that way we can understand some basic troubleshooting techniques. First troubleshooting technique that I'm going to discuss today is going to be about your inputs and outputs. Now, your inputs can be one of two different things. You can have inputs that are power, that require power, or inputs that require a digital signal or an analog signal, or signal in general. Now, inputs and outputs are the same as they both have inputs that require voltage and signal, and the outputs adjust that and give you a signal or an output such as voltage. When you're talking about power supplies for computers, you will take the input from a voltage coming out of the wall, 120 volts, AC, 60 hertz, and goes into a small transformer and spits out the voltage that your computer requires. Today I've brought a couple of props. That way we can discuss the different modules that you must go through in doing your inputs and outputs, your troubleshooting along the way. When you start on something, I like to do what's called a half-split method. This method allows you to look at the input and the output of the entire system and then split it in half to see which side your problem's on. In this module system, it's not really possible because it doesn't have enough modules. But we're going to look a little bit at our basic input outputs. We've got our cord that comes from the wall. It gives you 120 volts AC out of the wall. We've got our power transformer, which is usually a block, such as this. And we do have our end item computer, laptop, which converts that voltage and uses it for display purposes. Now, we won't get a display on our laptop if there's no power. Now, power can come from one of two sources. Power can either come from the wall through the inverter into the power port, or it can come from the battery. The battery spits out the same voltage as the inverter does. Now, right now we're going to talk about the power coming from the wall. I would consider this one module. One module coming from the wall as your input and exiting at the power inverter before it gets transformed into DC. Now, if we had a problem inside this, we would get no power at our output. Our input wall power would be 120 volts AC. We can check this using a multimeter. And we would also have no output at this little guy, which would be the same 120 volts AC. Now, if that was the problem, you would automatically know if there was no voltage on the output and there was voltage on the input, somewhere in here is your problem. That's a troubleshooting method. The same way goes when you plug that into this power module. We can plug it in, knowing that we have our good voltage in, and then test the voltage on the output. If there is no voltage, then we know that there's something inside this power module not correctly working. Now, if all that is correct, and we have the correct output voltage from our inverter, and we plug it into our computer, and we get no output from the computer, we know that our computer is the end item, and its display would be the output. So there would be a problem in our computer. Saying what the problem is inside the computer, although, is another discussion on inputs and outputs and possibly the half-split method, although we're not going to speak about that today. So fortunately for us, we know we've got good power on our block, and we have good power coming out of our cable and our cord, so our computer will turn on. And I hope you've learned something, a little bit about troubleshooting, a little bit about inputs and outputs, and maybe that helps you out a little bit. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.